Antonio said, sorry, I used to hear myself talk that wrong. As Antonio said, I'll be presenting some tips and tricks that you guys can use in your current version of Sage, and hopefully they make your day-to-day processing a little bit easier. Oddly enough, most of these things I'll show you have been in the system for years, but on the consulting and help desk side, we get tons of calls and questions about the things I'm going to show you, and people who've been using the software for 10, 12 years never knew they existed. So we kind of like to show you what's in the trunk that you already own and see if you can utilize it. So that being said, and the fact that you guys are probably starving, I'm going to get going. One of the first things you can do in the system is at the library master level. And by the way, I see people with pens. I'm going to be sending everyone a PDF copy of these tips and tricks, so you don't have to try and keep up with me. At the library level, or library master level, you have the ability to create shortcuts for common tasks or programs that you may use day to day. And there's several ways to do this. The first would be up here in the shortcut bar at the top of the system. And you can simply grab any kind of a task, hold down your mouse key, and drag it up to the shortcut bar, which mine disappeared. Guess I might want to get that back. And create a shortcut that you can access at any time. You can also right-click up here and add a task simply by selecting the module that you want to add from, the folder, and then the task itself. Additionally, some people like to, or frequently, people use other programs during the day, obviously. So you can right-click and also add programs. So, for example, I'm in my Microsoft Office folder, and I can simply scroll down and find my Excel executable, if it's going to pop up here, and be able to launch Excel directly from Sage. So it makes it really quick to access those programs and tasks that you utilize frequently. This can get kind of busy, so you can get quite a few things up here. So just be aware you can also right-click and rename these tasks. So you may just want to rename this to SO, for example, for sales order, or something like that, or something that just makes more sense to you. Another location that you can do this is the My Tasks menu. Now, a lot of people have no clue this little folder exists. They sweep right over it every day. And this is a way you can add more tasks, meaning if you run out of room in the shortcut bar at the top, you can simply right-click and create either a public or a private folder. So for example, I'll create a private folder. And I'm just going to rename that one to My Stuff. And the same way we did before, we'll just simply click and hold down a task, drag it up into there, and release, and you've got additional tasks. Now you can create multiple folders simply by right-clicking and adding other folders. You can separate them by module if you like, or something like that, or some people do period in, or other things such as that. It's really up to you. To get rid of those, you simply right-click and delete. You're not deleting the program or the actual task, you're just getting rid of those from My Tasks or the shortcut bar itself. The second thing I'd like to show everyone that frequently they don't know is this little address bar up on top here is actually a browser, file browser, or a web browser. So if I simply punch in a local path, I can see my local files and browse down to them, and we're still within Sage. So if you notice, we're on the Web Content tab and still within Sage. On that note, if you want to go outside of Sage, this is actually, if I can type this right now, this is also a web browser. So a lot of people don't realize that you can access websites from within Sage. Obviously, it's going out to the web to do this, but it's a great tool to use just for those common places you go. You can browse back and forth by using the back button or the home button, or click the little drop down and access any of those locations that you've accessed before simply by clicking that again. So it's a pretty good utility. or task management process, I should say. Next thing I wanted to show you here is frequently during month end or other procedures, system maintenance, you may need to know who's in your system, what they're doing. You may go to close period end or something like that, and you get a message telling you someone's in the module you can't update, which is really great at 5 o'clock and everyone's gone home. So using the master console is a great way to figure that out. You can access that either via the little television icon at the top of the screen or through Library Master Master Console. And this is going to show you a list of all users, what company they're in, as well as what modules and what activities they're doing. Based on security rights, obviously all these things require security rights to click these buttons. You can simply select one task and kill that task. You have security rights to do so. Or shut down the entire system. So if this is a maintenance thing and your IT guys need everyone out of the system at night, you want to ensure they're out, you can shut down the entire system this way. As well as you can broadcast a message to all your users saying, hey, please get out. It's time for me to close the periods or something like that. And I see head shaking back there. So this is kind of a common thing we run into. Another thing that it comes in really handy is creating test companies. Test companies are even historical backups. So creating a company is fairly straightforward. It is somewhat dangerous. You obviously want to have your wits about you when you're doing this. But the place you do that is through Library Master Company Maintenance. And if I simply type in a new company code and then click the copy button, I'll get a lovely warning just saying, hey, you're about to do something that's pretty scary. Are you sure you want to do that? And you would select the company you're going to copy from and the company you're going to copy to. Now, these two selections, the source and destination, are probably the most critical things you're going to see in this entire process. Make sure those are correct. Make sure your source is production and the test is the one that can be overridden. Otherwise, you'll be like the occasional call we get every year saying, hey, how do I get my production company back? Because you may copy backwards an existing test company over production or something like that. So frequently when people are doing this, I tell them, hey, check those two fields 2 or 3 times, call your coworker in and say, hey, can you tell me what you see? Before you hit proceed. You do also have the ability to select the modules that you copy, but just be aware if you copy AR and not sales order and you're using sales order, you may be missing some related data that you need. One thing to also think about on these copies is how big your company data set is. There are several clients out there that have 30 or 40 gigabyte company files. So make sure your server has enough room for an additional 30 gigs or whatever that may be, because it's going to actually copy that size to the server. And it's kind of a bad day in the middle of your copy to have the network freeze up. You realize you're the cause of that. So you just maxed out the hard drive. So not a good thing. One other thing in Library Master, and sorry, I'm not used to this podium being slanted, so I'm clicking on the wrong stuff, is the ability to select user preferences. And this will increase the ability or ease of use for various users. And you can do this through Library Master Main, User Maintenance, and it's on the Preferences tab. So these are actually pretty useful for several reasons. First of all, if Jay Martin here, this user, is notorious for leaving at the end of the day, like we just talked about, and preventing me from updating my invoices or something like that, we can tell the system that Jay Martin's going to automatically log off after 20 minutes. So if the person is still there in front of their same system, they're going to get a lovely message saying, hey, system's shutting down, and they can intervene, if it's the middle of the day or something. But it's a great way to just, gracefully exit them at the end of the day. You can also specify things such as implied decimal point. So when you're doing data entry, are you a 10 key user and you hate hitting the decimal on your 10 key? Using the enter key as a tab to go through the data entry grids is also a great thing to select. And Then zoom on reporting. So when you run your daily sales journals and things like that, they pop up in front of you. Are you like me and your glasses are getting thicker every year? You can set a default zoom. So it automatically zooms into 150, 200, something like that. And again, this is obviously user by user, so it's a great thing that you can use there. Let me switch my little cheat sheet real quick. Now we're going to move into system-wide functions. So if you're on non-legacy modules, so if you're on a fairly recent version, most of these are going to apply. If you're using work order or something, they won't apply. But what we're going to look at now is data entry grids and modifying those. So I'll click on my little shortcut up here. A lot of people don't realize that you can modify these grids. And they're user-by-user preference, so if you modify yours, your neighbor's not going to yell at you, unless you're sharing a username or something like that in Sage. But there's several ways you can modify them. You can simply drag fields around by grabbing the header and moving those around. Select a field down at the bottom in the additional information and drag those up. And so on. So the next time you go in the screen, it's going to remain that way, and obviously it's task by task. So if you move this for sales order and you do purchase orders as well, you have to recreate that in that module as well. There's also additional functionality in here that people don't realize in the grids, and that is right-click functionality. Now, as you can see, that opens up a whole new world. So the first and foremost, I should say, is getting rid of what I just did. So if I, set my grid to the way I wanted it, or I thought I did, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I really caused myself some grief, I can right-click, go to panel settings, and reset all that. I can actually reset the grid I just messed up. I can reset the size and the position of the entire screen. When I close it and go back in, it's going to be Sage default, back to what it should be. That's a common one we get. People kind of mess up their own screens and can't figure out how to get back. Additionally, from here, you can hop to other tasks in the system. So sales order history, open sales order reports, GL account maintenance, budget maintenance, account entry, things such as that. And then, last but not least, export to Excel. So if you have a very large data entry grid and you're copying from clients or customers' spreadsheet or something, and it's kind of hard to compare on the screen to their spreadsheet, you can dump this grid right out to Excel. That makes it very nice. Another feature that we find people underutilize or don't utilize at all is custom lookups. So what we mean by that is everywhere in Sage, let me close this back down, where you see those magnifying glasses, those are considered lookups. And you can customize those. So if you look at what's on the screen right now, that's the default view that Sage gives you. But I can click custom and give this view a name, call it SWK, and say this is the way I always want to see it. It's going to be my default view. On the right side is what you're going to currently see, I should say. And on the left side is what you can add. So we have the ability to add pretty much anything we want. And what I'm going to do is even add a calculated field. So what I'm going to do is add order total. And I'm going to make this 15 characters wide. And you can specify the way the number looks and so on if you like. And I'm going to click calculated field. This allows me to take several fields and add and subtract them. Cool. Guess I shouldn't get that addition symbol in there. And now when I look up, I've got an order total field. You can go hog wild on it if you like. Some people go really crazy on that. I'm also going to get the, let's see, let me get the salesperson name out here, or the salesperson ID. There we go. And as I walk through this, I can establish things like filters. So I only want things where the order total is greater than such and such, or the salesperson number equals something else. And at the last part, I can define what my default search is. I always search for order date is equal to, or something like that. I'm going to go ahead and click finish though. and now I've got a new lookup. I can dump this out to Excel, and it's great for a new sales meeting, something like that. See who's got what in the system, and ready for your next meeting. Another thing that comes in handy that people don't seem to be aware of is customer last purchase history. So for those of you who run sales order, this is a great feature. If you go into a sales order and click this little red binoculars button, it's going to show you sales history. It's going to show you what that customer bought, when they bought it, and what they bought it for. So it's great for sales teams who are kind of questioning their custom pricing that you have set up or something, or the price sheet. They can, or if it's on the fly, like many companies, they can go back through and actually see what they bought last and how much it was for. One other function is the ability to create purchase orders from sales orders. Now, this is a common thing we run into as a requirement. Now, there are a couple things that must be set in order for this to happen. In purchase order options, you must define that you can create purchase orders from sales orders. You can put a checkbox. As well as the item that you select must have a primary vendor defined. So it doesn't matter which one, but it has to have a primary vendor defined. When we go through and meet those criteria, on the Totals tab, you'll see a Generate PO button. When I select that, it's literally going to come up, tell me what the next PO number is, and generate a PO for my order. So for you people who do the purchase order type distribution, it's a great function, great shortcut, and then you can go and edit the PO whatever you need to. Let me sheet here. One thing that we also run into frequently is in inventory specifically. We will run into issues where the quantities, if I get to my screen, quantities on SO or PO may be wrong. Now those are calculated fields, so as you're adding transactions and removing transactions throughout the system's actually calculating those, and those are considered sort fields. And occasionally we run into a problem where they're wrong. There is a utility to recalculate that, and that's going to be library master, utilities, rebuild sort fields, I should say, the files. There are several considerations we want to take into account before you run this. It's going to require that you update all inventory-related transactions, invoices, receipts, inventory transfers, anything related to inventory needs to be updated. As well as you want to have a backup of your system. Typically, this is a pretty innocuous utility, but there can be times where we've seen the utility do something worse. You also, and if you have problems with any of these utilities, by the way, we're here to help. So don't hesitate. They may be a quick utility, but more than happy to help. Also, if you allocate things through sales order, if you pre-allocate on sales orders, after you run this utility, you would need to go back through and allocate those again, those items. But the way the utility works is you simply select the module and select the company and hit proceed. The system is going to ask you if you want to recalculate the open order quantity. You simply say yes, go back to inventory, and the quantity on order has been recalculated. Now you can do that for purchase orders, sales orders, various fields throughout the system, or various places throughout the system. And a quick time check. Good, all right, so a couple other things that we run into frequently are credit memo applications. So if we look at accounts receivable real quick, you can see that this company has open credit memos, and these credit memos have not been applied. So we've got credit memos and invoices. And a lot of people don't realize that you can apply those through cash receipts entry. It's a very straightforward process, and clean those up. One consideration is your transaction date. So, when you want that to be cleaned up. Make sure you change your transaction date to when you want it to be applied, as well as where you're going to do this. So we're going to go through cash receipts, batch entry real quick. We're going to create a $0 deposit. And we're going to pick that one customer. We saw that had both credit and debit memos. And we're going to hit apply. Now you can punch in anything in the check number field you want, you know, APP and a date or something like that, but it is limited in characters. So I'm just going to put 119, amount received is 0. And I'm going to go in and simply select the credit and another invoice. And when I update this, it's going to remove the credit memo or basically net it out and relieve the balance on that invoice. Okay. The same applies, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. The same applies through AP. So if you have credits or anything through AP, those are processed through manual check entry. So in manual check entry, same thing. We're simply going to go ahead and punch in a value, specify a vendor, and then specify what we're going to apply. Now this as well would leave a balance on that invoice and, you know, ready to pay, but I don't know if any of you guys have it where your clients send you a check and a list of credits that they want to apply to that payment, or to their account, I should say, but this is a great way to apply those. Go ahead and delete my system, or my transactions here. So that is about all I have for you right now. The thing that I'm going to be emailing out to you does have additional information, additional tips and tricks, but because of time, we're not going to cover those. And I think we're up for Antonio.
Was that useful? Right? Anyway, we can customize our Sage 100 and optimize our time. I think it's very useful. That was fantastic, David. Thank you so much. And of course, we'll still be here if you have questions or if you want to see additional tips and tricks. A lot of good content today. We have a lot more coming up, including new standards for revenue and leases, fixed assets, tax updates, and the road ahead, how to choose your next software, and AP automation, and much more than that. Now, the moment you really have been waiting for, lunch. We will serve lunch in the room next door. We have some time, so by all means, also come by and visit our solution providers at the back of the room and their tables. Some of them have already presented, some will present later on today. Please return by 2, enjoy your lunch, and thank you so much.